Hey, assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome back to the Shout Out Show of me, your host, Preacher Moss. I'm glad you made it back. I appreciate some of the comments that I received from yesterday's show, just some of the insight, suggestions, if you will. Admittedly, I went on a bit of a rant yesterday. I was upset. I was emotional over the death of Ahmaud Arbery down in Georgia. I'm always sensitive about loss of life anyway in a natural situation. I'm already heightened because of the whole COVID-19 scenario, and this was just senseless, and it just fell into a pattern of being Black in America. And I challenged some organizations. I called them out, and I meant it. Do your job. Do your job. If this is like one, if you will, one loss of life is like the loss of all humanity, we got to do our job. Shout out my sister Layla. Thank you for coming back, sister. I appreciate you. Love you. The thing that hit me yesterday, after I calmed down, and we all have to calm down every once in a while. The thing that hit me yesterday was I started looking at a pattern of what it meant to be Black in America and what it meant to be Muslim in America, but also what it also meant to be Black and Muslim in America. And I realized the thing that's happening is something that's been happening for a very long time. And it's especially critical right now because the playing field is level. People are out of work. Doesn't matter what color you are. People are struggling. Doesn't matter what color you are. People are getting sick. Though a disproportionate amount of people who are getting sick are minorities. There comes a point where you just have to say what it is that you're dealing with in America. And we're dealing with two things. Number one is white supremacy in America. And number two is the fact that the Black man and the Black woman remind the United States, the makers of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, that we have an eye on you, that you've been defeated, that you took everything away from a group of people and they still managed to rise up and rise above what you were doing. One of the biggest problems in the United States for African Americans, for Latinos, for Native Americans, is that we've been put in this space, in this conversation with the rest of white America, where we are metaphorically and in some regards, verbally asking them permission for us to be great. Asking permission to be great. You should never have to ask permission to be great unless you're dealing with people who aren't great themselves. Now, this is not all of white supremacy, all of white America, but it's enough of them to make the case. So I would say in this scenario, we as individuals, cultures that contribute to the United States, we have to stop asking to be great. That is the most ludicrous thing that you can ever ask. Even our religion, the foolishness of asking permission from people who are not greater than you, it serves a purpose. It serves a purpose mentally, it serves a purpose philosophically, and it serves a purpose financially. We cannot ask people permission. Let's just start with the word permission. Why are we asking these people permission to be great? I'm a practicing Muslim. I'm a conceptual thinker. I'm what they call a creative. And this is off the comedy side, because I will flip this around. Just the irony in this whole thing is funny if you think about it. The people in the United States who are the power elite constantly have ruled over the people that don't have power by virtue of the fact that we always have to ask permission or receive permission. Think about that. You have to ask permission or receive permission. Now, maybe a religious scholar can back me up on this, but Even in the Quran, Allah does not make you ask permission. He lays out what's permissible, what's not permissible, and you make a decision. You lay out what's permissible, what's not permissible. He's kind enough to tell you these are the consequences, but let me at least lay out the rules for you. When we really start thinking about it, and I thought about that young man yesterday, and I got so incensed every time I watch the tape, I can't watch it anymore. What they wanted for him was permission to exist. They wanted permission for him to identify them as a power above him. Running just signified, metaphorically, he wasn't going to do it. Ironically, he was running towards freedom. Slavery's been over since how long? You still got a young man in 2020 having to run towards freedom. Philosophically, people, there's something wrong with that. And it's not to say that I'm a hardcore individual, or I don't believe in the bright side or the good in people, but doggone it, I'm no fool. And I know as you're listening to it, you're no fool. I got 3 words that changed my whole life when I was a kid. You ready? Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Tuskegee syphilis experiment. Housed under the whole auspices of the United States healthcare system. And just so you know, they had a CDC back then too. If you look at the details, they took a group of young men, not young men, I'll just say black men. I don't know if they were young or not. But they took a group of black men and they pulled them into a situation that it's foolish that they wouldn't take advantage of. They offered them health care. They were farmers in Tuskegee, Alabama. They offered them health care. And under the auspices of offering them health care, they subjected them to expose them to syphilis. An experiment that was supposed to be 6 months, brothers and sisters, went 40 years. Even when they ran out of funding, they still kept the experiments going. And we sit around in our houses right now dealing with coronavirus. Okay, I'm going to say it's nobody's fault. I don't know. Allah knows best. Allahu Akbar. But it seems extremely suspicious when people express themselves. I'm not saying folks going, I don't want to be stuck inside anymore, but people start asking the questions of the who, what, where, when, and why us. And when you get to that point, the math gets fuzzy. You have people in positions of power who are making some of the most irrational decisions on a consistent basis. Give them credit. It's on a consistent basis. Who would run away from a health task force, a corona task force, when the numbers are rising? When we are literally issuing people their own death warrants in the space of going out for employment? Well, I'm going to tell you something. This is a message to everybody. My Muslim, non-Muslim, but darn sure my black folk. Don't take part in the new Tuskegee syphilis experiment. It's called coronavirus or COVID-19 because we don't know all the facts. They want us to run out to these jobs knowing that we're not protected. We're not protected. The insurance won't cover it. And if you go to the hospital, doggone it, they're going to turn you around and tell you to go back home because it's not serious enough. We have to be at the forefront of making our own decisions. Now, my grandfather told me something a long time ago, great quote. He said, son, never argue with a man that's smoking a cigarette while he's pumping his gas. Let me say that again. Never have an argument with a man that's smoking a cigarette while he's pumping his gas. Because the brothers and sisters, that totally explains where we are right now with our politicians. I'm not saying they're all bad, but I'm saying they need work. Because now you have a scenario where the irrational now scares away the rational. The irrational scares away the rational. I'll tell Muslims who are watching this show, this is the reason why a lot of people in America don't like you. You're part of a religion where the front part of it says you got to be rational. The front part of it says you got to ask questions. You got a religion that says at the front part it says this is permissible, this is not permissible. You have to make a decision and be responsible for your actions. That is not the United States. People make decisions, poor decisions, and then you're responsible for their actions. I sound pretty hard. I may sound hard. I'm not bitter though. I'm enlightened. You see, because it's been a lot of misinformation out there. But it's not new. I want us to bear in the fact that it's not new. It's just consistent, it's nuanced, and it's repackaged. The coronavirus thing is a TV show. Just like Grey's Anatomy or something like that. Except there's no commercial breaks. And people die for real. Well, the young man down in Georgia, that might as well be in the heat of the night. Except there's no commercial breaks and people die for real. My point, brothers and sisters, is we have a voice. We have an opportunity to change the paradigm. Don't be afraid. Stop waiting for permission to be great. We come from a whole tradition, and this is something that needs to be explained for people who migrate to the United States. I love you, but I want you to be real clear about this. The Black experience has been one built upon we will no longer ask permission. Let me tell you the miracle of Black growth and Black intelligence in the United States. During slavery times, you weren't allowed to read. It was illegal to read. One of my greatest bits I've ever done was a piece called The Ballad of Charlie Snowfoot Parker, and it had to deal with the fact that slaves weren't allowed to read or write. It's punishable, or whipping by death, whatever, let's call it what it is. You're talking about 1863, right? Right? You're talking about 1863. What's up, baby? She's such a cutie. All right, man, thank you for putting the baby on the show. She is awesome. And no, I'm put it back up. You know why? This is about the future of this young lady right here. I don't want her to go through what people have been going through for the last 150 years. So let's talk about it. In 1860, in slave times, the African American was not allowed to read or write. Now, even in freedom, you've released the people who are not able to read or write. Then you come up with vagrancy laws that basically said if you're caught without a job by the police or by the law enforcement people, they can imprison you. They can take you to jail. It's a different type of slavery. We're talking slavery back then. We're talking prison now, or the prison industrial complex. Call it what you want to, but these are facts. Flip forward. This is the genius of the African American spirit. Not able to read, no apparent jobs, no entrepreneurial scenarios. People aren't loaning you money. However, in 100-year span, they figured out how to set up schools, how to set up banks, how to finance their dreams, finance their businesses. Let's go forward. They build schools whereby they couldn't read. They built schools, they built colleges and universities, and they create a system that actually produces lawyers, not in white law schools, but in Black law schools, to actually go and contest and argue against constitutional law, or in this particular space, unconstitutional law. That's a miracle. Then we get to the Civil Rights Act in the 1970s, and by God, the 1980s. And what are we doing? We are back asking for permission. Roll it back. Roll it back. Every convert to Islam can tell you this. They never asked permission to become Muslim. Every Muslim will tell you, I never asked permission to stay Muslim. The Black spirit and the Islamic spirit in the United States has to be fine-tuned and reorganized, that we don't ask permission. We assume that we are correct and we have rights. That's it. That's the only conversation we need to have. I always go back to the Tuskegee syphilis experiment because that's America in a nutshell. That's America in a nutshell. The evil that was perpetrated, it was bad enough. It's supposed to be for 6 months. Brothers and sisters, it was 40 years. Nobody went to jail. Nobody served time. Nobody got sued. Why? Because they were Black farmers. Most of them were dead? No. It's because people thought they could get away with it, whether it was 6 months or 40 years anyway. And so you have this crisis now in Brunswick, Georgia, actually one of the hubs of where they had one of the first Muslim communities. Believe that. So now you have this thing down in Brunswick, Georgia, and let me tell you what you're looking at. Are you looking at white privilege? Yes. But you're looking at white privilege on life support. It's like it caught a case of coronavirus years ago and it's been struggling to hang in there. And these efforts and these shows and these displays of power and control over black people, over black religion, over Islam, which has been turned to Islamophobia. And I'm going to tell something too. All Muslims out there, stop hyping up this Islamophobia. They can't control you. That's giving them permission in their minds to treat you any way they want to because they think you're scared. And when you're scared, you're soft. And when you're soft, you fold and you won't hold true to the things that are real. So let it go. Clearly I have some things on my mind, but the name of this show is what? Let's make sense of things that don't make sense. I've clearly told everybody, you can't ask permission to be great. If you have children, every day you ask them something, you say, don't be afraid to be great. Ask them. Don't be afraid to be great. That's number one. Number two is stop asking permission of people who are not greater than you. Would you take marriage advice from a man that's been married 7 times? No. Would you go to a dentist that's missing teeth? No. Would you buy a rap record from a rapper that stuttered? No. That was kind of mean, but it's real. We already have these things inherent. I harken back to something that was said years ago when Senator Bob Dole was running for president. Bob Dole was running for president, and they wanted Colin Powell, retired General Colin Powell, to run as his running mate. And of course, he tuned it out. He said no. He said no. Thank you, sister. I appreciate you. He said no. And when they asked him why he didn't want to run as VP on the ticket with Bob Dole, he said something that was insightful. But check this out. They didn't say it, but he said it. It was beautiful. He said, why would I run with a guy I could beat? Why would I run with a guy I could beat? And here in America, I'm sorry, folks. I'm going to pull out this Michael Jordan on you. And if you ever check out his thing on ESPN, The Last Dance, yeah, he's a different level of competition. But I like Michael Jordan because he always presented something to me. It was never enough to show up just to be competitive. You got to show up to win. And we have to get out of this mode of being competitive is just good enough. It's not. You're dealing with people who win. That's all they worry about, winning. The metaphor for permission, if you really want to get into it, is law. The one thing that we have not been able to do, have not been successful in, developing our own laws. The idea that, and we're controlled by laws. We have people who, I can show you laws on the books right now. We didn't even know they're on it. There are laws on the books from 18-something that are discriminatory towards blacks, discriminatory towards Latinos. They have laws on the books discriminatory towards gays. You know what? They're on the books and they can be pulled out anytime because we don't know or we don't have the understanding that you have to pull these things off and you have to do some very serious investigation. Think about this, folks. There was a guy, we used to compete. We competed. I used to play tennis. Okay? Let me give you the rules. I used to play tennis. I played for a certain section of town. He played for another section of town. When we would meet to just practice and have games, I'd beat the tar out of this dude. I'd smoke him. Every day I'd smoke him. That was my thing. That was my life thing. That was like, I'm going to smoke this dude. And I had a group of guys that we played, African-American tennis players, and that's our job. We go all over the city. We're going to smoke these cats. Go in the suburb. We eating dudes. But when we would get to these tournaments, the rules changed. The rules set up differently, whereby it didn't cater to our strength, but it made sure that we played on our weaknesses. So they would change the time of the tournament. So the amount of balls that could be hit. So the people who were called in and out, all of a sudden we had people who were looking at the lines where we were just calling the games honestly ourselves. And that became something that reminded me of what? The fact that when America can't beat you honestly, they give you a new law. When America can't beat you honestly, they give you a new law. Look at this coronavirus thing. They're talking about laws that you can't stay in your house. You know, if you come out of your house, but it's different in every state because you can come out of your house and endanger your life in Georgia, but if you do it somewhere else, you're gonna go to jail. You see, this is the trick. This is the trick of people who always want you to ask them for their permission. That's the game. I may hurt some feelings here, but I'm gonna be honest, man. It's become that way in this religion. We have a cadre of people who want you to ask them your permission to talk to your God. To become close to your God, you got to come through me. I'm not saying it's everywhere, but it's there. We have more situations of abuse, more situations of spiritual bullying. We have more of those situations because people have fallen into the same trap I told you. You're not in the cotton fields. You're not in the cotton fields. There's no spiritual slavery. And guess what? There ain't going to be no spiritual emancipation proclamation. Stop asking permission. We have a few minutes left. And I just want people to marinate on the fact that we do have choices. We have rights, but those rights are wrapped around good choices. And people have to respect that. Maybe we have to start looking at these people under a petri dish and understand what you're talking about has nothing to do with me and totally separate. Totally separate. Because there's something to be said about things I heard about separation back in the 60s and 70s. And it wasn't really from white people. It was from white privilege and it was from white supremacy. The white man, whatever, but that privilege is a beast. And you know what? It makes sense. You can call it what you want to. It's not reverse racism. It's necessity. It's intelligence. We have to be able to look at these things and say it's not right and separate ourselves. I'll be doggone if I'm going to work hard and ask permission to be paid. Can you pay me after I work hard and put in the effort? No, that's not going to happen. Even the vernacular doesn't sound correct, folks. As you hear this and as you hear my voice, I just want you to think a little bit more. Thank you, brother. Brother Fareed, I appreciate you. I'm just being honest, man. I've gotten out of the business to ask people permission. I never asked permission to do Allah Made Me Funny. And it's funny, when I went back to Hollywood, people were upset and they're still upset because I never asked permission. I say Allah Made Me Funny because I want people to understand you didn't give me permission to be funny or to be a comedian. I had a conversation, doggone it, didn't involve you. It involved somebody who was better than you, who was higher than you, and knew more about me than you did. All that person wants is to control you. At this point in time, brothers and sisters, throw off those shackles. Put down them knapsacks. Give yourself permission. Give yourself the opportunity to make decisions for you. All this stuff, Corona, all that, is a side story. This will be a movie of the week in 2 years. We'll be looking back going, hey, man, you remember that Corona? Yeah, man, where were you doing Corona? The same way we do in 9/11. Do not let these people, I almost said devils, do not let these devils control what God has already given you. Don't ask permission. Think of all the things you don't ask permission for that improve your life. When you pray, do you ask permission? When you hug your kids, do you ask permission? Why do we ask these people for permission? They're not better than us. And it's not getting on anything that's mean spirit. I'm like, this is the truth. You ever go to court? You got to tell a man you don't know, yes, Your Honor, we don't know if he's honorable. You're in the court now. Address him as Your Honor. Well, his thing says might. Why can't I say might? Because we're trained. When you go in court, we're trained. These are things you say so you'll get a better outcome in court. But even then, my point is this. Take back ownership. If you think I'm lying, then go watch the video of that young man jogging. Him jogging. And men chasing him behind the truck. And I also believe that third person was the one that actually had the camera that was taping it. So this is not an accident, people. They were looking for somebody who was black. But the man fights for his life. With the guns, with the rifles, he fights for his life. And I will respect that young man, Brother Ahmad. I'm going to respect him because you know what? He didn't ask them for permission to live. He was willing to fight for it. That's all the time I got for brothers and sisters. I appreciate you tuning in. Next show probably will be a lot lighter. But y'all know I was heated yesterday. Just call it what it was. I was hotter than fish grease. But I appreciate you tuning in. Please keep me in your watch because, you know, these things do bother me. People say you're a comedian. Yes, I'm a comedian, but I'm not a clown. I'm educated. I've come up with some of the best traditions of this community, the Muslim community, and the African American community. And so I won't lie and I won't hold my tongue. Guess what? I ain't going to ask permission. See y'all later.